So Nollie, thank you so much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership.
Dr. Nick, thank you so much for the invite. It's honestly my pleasure to be with you here today.
It's great to have you. And please tell us, before we walk into the future, Nollie, where did you grow up?
Oh gosh, a number of places, hey? So I was actually born in Klerksdorp. At that point in time, my dad actually worked at Anglo American. So I was born there. My older brother, older sisters were actually born in Johannesburg, in Baragwanath. So I think we stayed there until I was 3 years old, before moving to the Eastern Cape. We were in Umtata, and then we were in East London. My dad was a CEO and MD of a couple of corporations that side, before moving back to Joburg, in 1999, and we've been in Johannesburg since then.
And tell us, Nollie, what was your dream career when you grew up?
Oh gosh. So with regards to a dream career, I honestly saw myself as a chartered accountant, because that was for me a subject I was extremely good at in high school. I think I was one of the top students in Crawford College, Lone Hill, up until matric with regards to accounting. And for me, I had honestly not even heard of the career that I'm currently doing. So it was being a doctor, a lawyer, a nurse, those types of careers, like accountants at that point in time. So I actually had wanted to study a BCom accounting degree and actually do a CA and then become a chartered accountant. And I actually applied to one of the big 4 accounting firms when I was in matric, and I actually got a bursary to actually study my BCom accounting, which I actually did do at the then Rand Afrikaans University, which is known as RAU, but it's now known as the University of Johannesburg. So I actually went that route before I actually stumbled upon my current career.
And Nollie, can you tell us who inspired you in your early days?
Honestly, I'm going to say in my early days, it has to be my parents, right? With regards to my dad, I think one of the big things for me was I was seeing him in leadership positions. So as I said, he was actually a CEO of a number of organizations and a managing director. So I actually got to see him every day go to work and do what he actually does and come back and tell us about his day at work. And I was even lucky enough to actually sit in a couple of board meetings with him just for me to actually learn, right? So literally you're sitting like a little mouse in the corner. And for me, that actually put me in good stead for my future leadership path. And then also with my mom. My mom, I think, is the most courageous and tenacious person that I know. She's an avid learner. I think currently she's sitting with 8 degrees. And I think she got her PhD literally at 63. And then that was also a lifelong dream of hers after acquiring a number of other degrees. So honestly, both my parents have been extremely inspirational. And for me, especially the fact that they've always been encouraging for us as their children to actually learn as much as we can, fail as much as we can, but be able to learn from those failings. So learn fast, fail fast, and actually learn to pivot from there. So you don't sit and wallow in your failure. So honestly, that's how they bred us, in inverted commas. So for me, they've just been so supportive about anything and everything that we actually do as their children. So yeah, my number one inspiration.
Thank you. And Nollie, you're leading a very impressive career. You're the CDO of the last year. You're Data Analytics Leader of the Year. And you're a Global Data Power Woman. Can you tell us, looking back over your career, was there a turning point, or maybe 2, where things could have gone different?
Okay, so as I said, I actually studied the BCom accounting degree, and at the end of that degree, I actually sat my parents down to officially tell them that is honestly not a career I saw myself doing. And no offense to any accountants out there, but for me, I felt it was a bit boring, a bit tedious. So I actually sat them down and I actually informed them that I wanted to study another degree. And I took as many electives as possible when I actually did my second degree at the University of Pretoria. And that's when I actually took informatics as an elective and statistics, which I didn't know at that point in time I would later actually use. So long story short, I actually got into management consulting, did that for a number of years. But whilst in management consulting, it's when you management consulting, you get placed into different project teams. And then within those teams, this is where I actually realized there was a team within my bigger project team that were actually doing business intelligence. At that point in time, I didn't know what it is. I just saw all these pretty colorful graphs. And I walked up to them and actually asked them what it is that they actually did. And they sat me down and they actually told me. And luckily enough for me, because I'd actually done informatics as an elective or a subject in varsity, I already knew how to code in Java and C++. So, but they were coding in SQL. So I actually decided to teach myself how to code in SQL and actually started creating my own portfolio of evidence to help me transition in careers. And it's something I just fell in love with and honestly made sense to me when I was actually doing it. And I then had the courage to actually go to one of the MDs of that particular company. After I'd sat down and did a situational analysis on their business intelligence and analytics, found out where all their gaps were. And I literally tried to get a meeting in his diary for 3 consecutive months. I eventually got it and told him all the issues they had. And he then actually asked me to start looking after their business intelligence. And honestly, that's how I transitioned.
Right. And Nollie, can you tell us what is driving you today?
Honestly, I'm going to say it's trying to make a positive impact in any life that I actually come across or interact with. So especially with regards to the positions that we have as leaders, you actually get to have people and resources under you. So for me, you want to make sure that you leave people better than how you actually found them. And at the back of that, if I can actually positively impact just one life, honestly, I would have been happy and satisfied. I would have done what I wanted to do. And then, of course, secondly, everybody wants to leave a legacy, right? So that then is the second priority, to actually try and leave a legacy, not for me, but for my kids, my grandkids, and the rest of my lineage.
Now, Nollie, looking into the future, and I know it's a big question, but what does the future of leadership mean to you?
So for me, it actually means that future leaders need to actually be servants first and bosses second. It requires leaders to be transformational in their thinking and actions, yet extremely futuristic. And what's more, these leaders need to have high moral authority and be led by their conscience and not by their egos. These are leaders who are willing to support and foster trust, collaborate, are transparent, have humility and flexibility, and are global citizens and serve instead of rule.
So, Nollie, what have you learned from your own journey that you consider most important for building future leaders?
All right, so Dr. Nick, I think from my own honestly exceptional leaders, and 1 or 2 were honestly not the best. And because I actually had that experience, and unfortunately it was female leaders, and I had bad experiences with them, what it then motivated me to do is to actually be the best leader that I can be for the people that I actually lead and manage. And I think for me, that is one of the most important things for building future leaders, is learn from your past mistakes, and more importantly, how about you become the best leaders for your people, where it will allow them to be the best versions of themselves that they actually show up at work as.
Now, Nollie, we are living in challenging times. And what is your advice for future leaders in terms of challenges? What are maybe one or two of the challenges they should expect to encounter in their career?
Yes. So, Dr. Nick, the world is changing incredibly fast, and future leaders will have to be challenged to keep up. They need to embrace change, stay agile, and be open to new ideas. And as a leader of the future, they will have to be astute enough to actually balance automation with the human touch, so that they will need to be futuristic whilst also humanizing what they're doing. And not everybody, unfortunately, will be able to strike that balance. So they have to decide what types of tasks to automate so that they can actually spend more of their time on high value activities, but also decide which businesses will, continue to benefit from human judgment. So I think it's that, literally trying to find the balance regarding being futuristic whilst also humanizing everything we do.
And Nollie, if you were to design a curriculum for future leaders, what are some of the new skills you would want to factor in?
Gosh, I think while some aspects of leadership, such as setting the vision and executing a strategy, will remain in future for future leaders, they will also need to possess an arsenal of some skills and even mindsets, let alone the skills. But if we're looking at just the skills, I think I've got 5 that I would actually suggest that they look at or actually acquire, right? Because everything can be learned. I think the first one, they need to be a coach. Great coaches motivate, they inspire, they engage their team while caring about each member as an individual. And the next skill that they need to actually have is actually being futuristic. So futurists make sure that organizations aren't surprised by what the future might bring. And in the world that we live in, and the work that is continuously changing and full of unknowns, you actually need to be that, a futurist. So futurists consider multiple scenarios. They think through possibilities, new and old, and they stay on top of trends and are connected to their network. So the next skill, I would say, is being a technology teenager. So if you've actually seen teenagers, they are at the pulse of the current and latest technologies. And that's what future leaders must be. They need to be the same way. They don't need to be experts in the practical application of some of these technologies, but they should actually embrace technology and know how to best leverage it to serve their company. They need to be tech savvy and digitally fluent. I mean, look at the craze now with ChatGPT 4 and version 5. And then the second last skill I would honestly say is actually being a translator. Translators for me are master communicators. They listen to understand and do more than hear what people are saying. And then lastly, Dr. Nick, the 5th skill is to be a Yoda. As weird as that sounds, right?
Yeah.
For decades, leaders have shared far away from being emotional. But in future, leaders will need to be emotionally intelligent, like Yoda, and develop their empathy and self-awareness.
Okay, I like that. Thank you, Nollie. And can you tell us, as a mentor to future leaders, can you maybe share a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
Oh, wow, Dr. Nick, so I'll even take my last year's cohort. So I actually do run a female-only mentorship program. And the inspiration behind that, as I said, I personally encountered 1 or 2 bad female leaders. So I wanted to make sure that I then gave back to up-and-coming females, especially creating a pipeline for future executive and C-suite members. So with that being said, looking at my last year's cohort, I can officially say all of them have actually progressed in leaps and bounds. I had 2 or 3 of the ladies actually get head positions before the end of last year. 1 got a senior management position, and also helped them with regard to the salary negotiations. And we managed to negotiate salary increases. I think the minimum was 14%, and one of the ladies actually got 100% salary increase in the new role that they actually got. So for me, I'm honestly proud of my mentorship and more importantly, my mentees and how they actually took a majority of the advice and guidance that I gave them and honestly ran with it and are now themselves also giving back through being mentors themselves.
Wow. Now, Nollie, looking back over your leadership journey and maybe your learning journey, are there any role models of leadership that you would recommend future leaders should learn from?
Yes, so instead of actually recommending like a specific role model for leadership, what I would instead do is recommend that a lot of people actually read a best-selling author and keynote speaker. His name is Jacob Morgan, and he actually has a book called The Future Leader. It is honestly an amazing book and filled with sage wisdom. So what he did in this book, he actually went and interviewed 140 CEOs from around the world, like from companies such as Audi, MasterCard, Unilever, Oracle, SAP, Verizon, to name a few, right? And what Jacob actually asked all these CEOs was a series of questions, including the top skills and mindsets that they believe will be the most prevalent for future leaders over the next decade to 30 years, right? And from these interviews, Jacob actually put together what he called the notable 9, which is basically the top 4 mindsets and 5 top skills that future leaders need to master. So for me, it is truly an amazing book to learn from, and that's what I would honestly recommend as a role model of future leadership.
Thank you. Now, Nollie, how can our listeners connect with you and where should they follow you?
All right, so thanks, Dr. Nick. So with regards to connection and following, I am very active on my LinkedIn profile, which is just Nollie Maoto, and the same thing for Instagram. So majority of the things that I post on LinkedIn, I actually post on Instagram. Majority of the people that actually DM me or inbox me, I personally respond to any inboxes that I actually receive. And where necessary, I provide as much help and guidance as I can when requested.
And Nollie, last but not least, since you mentioned legacy, what do you want your leadership legacy to be like? What would you like to be remembered for?
Honestly, Dr. Nick, I would say I would love to be remembered for leading with intention. So I think for me, I understand that I've been awarded an opportunity to lead others, which means that I have the ability to actually motivate, influence, and inspire them and help them become better versions and better people than when I found them. And more importantly, better leaders than I currently am myself. So for me, I think it's to, as I said before, especially in future, to actually not just think about futurizing things, but more importantly, to humanize them, right? And therefore, I do this by leading intentionally. So that for me is one of the things I want to be led for. So I want to be remembered for is how I've actually led my teams with intentionality and for the better.
Well, Nollie, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership and for inspiring so many future leaders.
Dr. Nick, thank you so much for your time and for this interview. It is honestly, truly appreciated.